Picture this. You are a UNSC Marine stationed in a garrison off in some far off colony in outer space. You're sitting there cleaning your MA5B assault rifle when all of a sudden you hear the sounds of battle outside. The lights cut out, it turns dark, and you and your crew are scared. All of a sudden, you hear an ominous laughter, and then he shows up with his red gravity hammer. Atriox and the Banished are attacking.
What's going on, friends? Welcome to the expLOREation podcast, where we do deep dives on all our favorite things, including video games, movies, and things of that nature. Today, we're going to be talking about the Banished from Halo.
Yeah.
So this is a topic that Greg actually suggested,
Oh, yeah.
and he's very well versed on this, and we're going to dive right in. So talk to me about Atriox.
Atriox. All right. So Atriox was a member of the brute shock troopers that the Covenant used during the earlier days of the Human Covenant War. These brutes were usually sent on suicide missions against the UNSC to wreak havoc amongst the humans that dared to oppose the Covenant. Mainly because the brutes at the time were of the lower Covenant hierarchy, that putting them right below the Sangheili. That's why they were used for the suicide missions. Atriox and his clan were sent on these suicide missions 40 at a time, with each mission having the same exact end result. Atriox coming back as the sole survivor of the mission. With each mission, Atriox gained respect amongst his Jurahanai
Say it slowly.
comrades, as well as some of his Covenant higher-ups and the Sangheili. But this put weight on his thoughts, as each mission resulted in him seeing his fellow comrades slaughtered for beliefs that were not his own. As a result, he began to despise the Covenant and their beliefs, which caused Atriox to snap. During the later stages of the Covenant War, Atriox and his clan once again were sent on a mission to Algolis, where a human colony had a UNSC garrison stationed there. Once again, out of the 40 members of the shock troopers that were sent in, Atriox returned alone, personally slaying the rest of the garrison on the colony. On his return, he was praised by his fellow comrades, but in the shadows, a Sangheili known as the Executioner was ordered to keep sending Atriox on another mission, but this time the Executioner had eyes closely watching him. After the mission, Atriox began to be more outspoken about his hatred towards the Covenant and the prophets, which caught attention of a pious brute who didn't actually take too kindly to those words. He attacked Atriox, and out of self-defense, Atriox put him down swiftly. Now, the Executioner saw this little spat between Atriox and the brute and declared Atriox a heretic for slaying his fellow brute and sentenced Atriox to death. Atriox seemed to surrender to what was about to happen to him, but once the energy sword was over his head, Atriox reached out and strangled the elite as his sword fell to the ground. Before the other elites could even react, Atriox's brutes slaughtered them all one by one. Thus, the Banished were created and tore a new hole into the Halo universe, gathering members from the Covenant and colonies they raided. The Covenant Separatists, the Flood, and later the UNSC were no match for Atriox and his crew.
Excellent. Do you actually have the quote that Atriox said before his execution about killing his brute brethren?
I do not. You want to enlighten me on that?
Yeah, so it was something to the tune of, I spared him the embarrassment of you guys finding out that he was dead, and I did it myself. I thought that was pretty badass.
Oh, yeah.
So let's get into the early days and the rise of the Banished. So the Banished, upon creation, they were considered to be no more than thieves, thugs, and pirates, lowlifes, really.
Oh, yeah.
And being low in numbers means that you have to be really careful with your units and your resources. So what was highly valued was stealth. Stealth was the number one thing for Atriox and his troops. The first big seizure, or strike, was immediately after the Great Schism. Atriox and his troops seized many of the assets of the Covenant, and this prompted the change of the outlook that the Covenant had on the Banished. They were no longer these pirates and raiders. They were now a formidable force in the eyes of the now split Covenant. To add salt to the wound, many members of the Covenant who still wanted to fight joined Atriox in his pursuit.
Yeah.
So let's establish a timeline here. If you know anything about the Banished, they were established in Halo Wars 2. So here's the timeline. Halo Wars 2 is set shortly after the events of Halo 5 Guardians, and it is in this game that the Banished are most notable, where they are the primary antagonist. The events of Halo Wars 2 are due to the Banished attacking a UNSC research facility on the Ark, which we'll get into later, and Atriox left no survivors except an AI, and it was at that point that Captain James Cutter decided to fight back. So talk to me about some of these key members.
Right. So first off, you have Decimus. He was one of the brutes that was alongside Atriox when he slaughtered the Executioner and his elites. Decimus is Atriox's right-hand man and general to the Banished.
And a total badass at that.
Oh yeah, and he has been with Atriox since day one. One of Decimus's personal feats was that he captured a Kigyar scientist, Jackal, named Sigran, who was later recruited to further the Banished technology, which is why they're such a powerhouse later on after the Human Covenant War. During the events on the Ark, a little bit of foreshadowing, but unfortunately, yes, Decimus was killed by attacking UNSC forces. One of his main units that he always loved were the Brute Warlords. They're similar to Atrax's Chosen, where Atrax picked handfuls of brutes under his own accord. But the difference is that Atrax's Chosen usually went into battle with a Type B brute shot. With the warlords, they usually went in wielding gravity hammers. One of the most notable warlords would be Pavium. Then you have actually a Sangeli, which his name is Let Volier. During the Human Covenant War, Let was a shipmaster on the Enduring Conviction and was responsible for the destruction of many UNSC warships. During the Great Schism, Let and his crew fought against the Covenant and the Brutes since the Sangeli were betrayed by the Prophets. And after the Covenant was defeated, Let had no desire to join the Swords of Sangelios nor the reformed Covenant under Julum Dama. Let joined the Banished when he captured Atriox after a raid on an airbase belonging to the Covenant. Atriox's capture was actually a ruse, and he gave the shipmaster a choice to join the Banish. Let's units were the Sangeli Honor Guardsmen. Usually saw them around Halo 2.
Very cool.
Protecting
All decked out.
Yeah, all decked out, protecting the prophets and higher ups, usually wielding energy swords and protecting higher personnel. Then you have later on Colony. This is actually kind of cool. Colony are two hunters, or Legolo, bond brothers that served the Banish under Atriox. They directed all the Legolo forces and his legions. The Bond brothers appear to have their own plans on the Ark later on, focusing much of their attention on the activities near the resting place of the Forerunner key ships. Colony undertook various missions to investigate this site outside the knowledge of the other Banished leaders, though Atriox was apparently aware of the colony's motivations. Colony usually has many unique units at his disposal, from the Skitterers, which are fast attack craft used by the Banished. They can also be used as defensive turrets and can heal nearby allies. And we also have the Legolo Captains, who are captains in the field that are only directly deployed when actual battlefield reconnaissance, where
Some serious muscle we got coming in.
some serious muscle, and there needs to be a recon of the area, since the captains have a direct link to the Colony Battle Brothers. Then you have Vortis, a brute lieutenant in Atriox's forces. Vortis is a young and cunning brute that only thinks about one thing: power. Vortis ruthlessly exploited the Ark for new resources and knowledge, especially the energetic metamaterials pumped throughout the Ark in the Great Rivers, and to keep the installation functioning. He usually comes around with his brute grenadiers, infused Huragox, and volatile scarabs. Then we have the previously mentioned Pavium, which is architect and siege master, making fortifications at Atriox's command, giving the epith the Unbreakable for his implacable discipline and prowess in combat engineering. Pavium's skills they're unimpeachable, but conflicting ties of loyalty to his clan and brother Vortis had slowed the advancement of the Banished. He's eager to prove his worth, and Pavium redoubles the efforts of his pack since their setback of Installation 09. His efforts have not gone without unnoticed, and Atriox tasked him with a mission to salvage a nearby starshift, which is actually the remains of High Charity, to judge their worthiness. And then, if you want, we can go on to the key battles.
So what's the Halo universe without some good battles, right? I think
yeah.
that's the main attraction here. So we actually have 3 lined up for everybody out there. The first one is the Battle of Otrak, right? And so when I was doing research on this, I initially could not find much, and diving deeper and all that good stuff, all I found was that Otrak is a Covenant planet that held a secret facility on it. Not much is known about the battle, but we can only hope for some extended universe lore.
Right.
And so I guess people are like, well, why would you include this if there's not much information about it? And my mindset is it gives us something to look forward to. I think the Halo universe has some of the best extended lore and things of that nature, novels, and all that. I wanted to throw that out there because maybe we'll be getting something soon, especially now with the renewed relevance of Halo Wars 2. And we'll get into speculation later, but let's cover the one of the bigger ones. So the second big battle, is called the Attack on Installation 00. So after spending 28 years adrift in space, the UNSC Spirit of Fire came into contact with Forerunner Installation 00. Previously inhabited and operated by humans, this installation was now taken over by the Banished. Atriox and his men launched a full-scale invasion on Installation 00, which included the deployment of blisterbacks, scarabs, banshees, and other forms of mobile vehicles.
Love
Although
them
the human
blisterbacks.
forces attempted to fight back, they were no match for this full-scale invasion. The Henry Lamb Research Facility was raided by General Decimus and his troops before being completely destroyed by orbital bombardment from the Banished flagship Enduring Conviction. Tell me that's not a good fucking band name right there, Enduring Conviction,
Oh
right?
yeah, always with the Syncilian, their ship names
Yeah,
have to be really.
phenomenal.
Oh yeah.
And then during this attack, Installation 00's portal to Earth was shut down, and there was no means for the humans to escape, and so most survivors resorted to hiding. Installation 00 provided a temporary base of operations for the Banished until the Spirit of Fire came into picture.
Now moving on, we'll be talking about the second arc conflict, which is the main setting of Halo Wars 2. The second arc conflict was fought, as previously mentioned, by the UNSC forces of the Spirit of Fire and the Splinter forces of the Banished. The second arc conflict started when Cutter and his Spirit of Fire mysteriously arrived to the arc. Cutter sending down a team of Spartans to investigate a distress beacon. The recon squad, which is a group of Spartans called Red Team, walked into an abandoned UNSC hut and found an AI named Isabel. After they met with Isabel, Red Team was in for a surprise because in the darkness lurked something terrible. Our main man, Atriox. Red Team engaged Atriox, who dealt with the Spartans easily, crushing even one of the Mark V helmets with his augmented fists, cracking the visor and everything. Tell me that's not badass.
Yeah, that's super badass.
And leaving one of the Spartans, Douglas, heavily injured. This war was on now. The Banished knew who they are dealing with, and the next battle that the both sides would engage in would be extremely heated. The first was the UNSC assaulting Decimus's salvage operation, which was a UNSC victory that sent Decimus retreating and calling in a strike from the Let Velor's crew, killing a good portion of the UNSC forces, but mainly his own as he ran tail. The next encounter would be pivotal towards the UNSC as they infiltrated the map room of the Ark, where they discovered the cartographer's data, but they also figured out how Atriox and his forces were using the teleportation grid to move troops faster around the world. Cutter decided to put a stop to this. With the grid down and then later on stopping the Banished reinforcements from coming in by disabling Let Velor's ship and allowing the Spartans Jerome and Isabel to infiltrate the ship and fire off an energy beam that hit the Ark, causing the installation Sentinels to attack and destroy the ship. With the Banished forces in disarray, they decided to take matters into their own hands and arm a halo that is settled within the Ark, Installation 09. Cutter, however, was able to stop this by assaulting the control room and then planting Anders in there to disable the ring. The ring, however, would end up teleporting into slip space before being snatched out of slip space by a Guardian, which were usually in Halo 5. That's when they were first seen. The war is still ongoing as both Cutter and Atrax's forces prepared for the continuous onslaught after the events of Halo 2 or Halo Wars 2. What's going on now after the result of the second arc conflict and all these key battles is that yes, the war is still ongoing, but we have a good chunk of stuff that actually happened between this. So the UNSC has gained a significant foothold on the arc, actually able to combat the Banished, and the Banished have a formidable foe, unlike the Covenant, where they would just easily pick them out of the sky like flies. Atrax's right-hand man, Decimus, is killed. Now we need someone to fill that position, which there are most likely a good chunk of brutes that can actually fill that position within his forces. And then the Banished flagship, Enduring Conviction, was destroyed. So, is there actually even a need for the shipmaster at this point? Will Atrax end up just kicking out the Sangeli and keeping with the brutes? We never know. And then the UNSC successfully planted a distress beacon on Installation 09, but the ring is intercepted by a Guardian on its way to Installation 04's site. Moving on, there was a flood encounter on the Ark. 2 months after the departure of Installation 09, Atrax sent two warlords, Vortis and Pavium as previously mentioned, to salvage a starship near the ruins of High Charity and scout the domes surrounding it. During the salvage operation, Vortis disabled the Sentinel's defense network around High Charity, piercing a hole through the shield surrounding High Charity with a scarab. Vortis hoped to salvage equipment from the destroyed Covenant Holy City. However, he and his forces inadvertently released the flood that managed to survive Installation 08's firing. Following several retreats, Pavium and his forces were able to hold off the flood long enough for Vortis and his strike team to reactivate the Sentinels. Using his mega turrets and eventually a retriever, Pavium and Vortis were able to destroy a proto-grave mine near High Charity moments before turning into a grave mine. With the Sentinels reactivated and the proto-grave mine destroyed, the Flood were seemingly once again contained. Gabe, you want to go on to the legacy?
Yeah. Well, actually, before we dive into the legacy, let's talk some implications because I
Oh, yeah.
love the Flood. They're probably my favorite bit of Halo lore out
Oh, yeah.
there, and I think we're gonna do a whole video just dedicated to the space zombie race that we know as the Flood.
Oh, yeah.
When I think the Flood and this whole situation, right? I think it's like a big middle finger to the Banished. Like, hey, you thought you made it out, blah blah blah. But as we know, with the Flood, they're never really gone.
Yeah, the Gravemind said it himself in Halo 3. They're like ebbing water on a beach. They rise and then they, sink back down.
Yeah, man, that's really poetry right there. I don't know, man. I really dig the idea and the fact that, the Flood is an adaptive life form, and we've seen them latch on to brutes before and elites and things of that nature.
Yeah.
But the fact that you have Atriox and all these, like, high generals right now, like, imagine if a little Flood leech latched onto that. Now not only do you have an issue at hand, you have a very fucking large issue at hand to deal with.
Oh, yeah.
Because these brute Flood forms, they're not going to be a total pushover.
Oh, yeah, no.
I don't know. I just love speculations like that and things of that nature.
Oh, yeah.
And we all know that the Halo rings were put in there to contain the Flood infestation. And we had this sort of issue pop up with Installation 09. I don't know, man. I just love the idea. You have any ideas where this thing might be going?
I mean,
Because we have
yeah.
a majority of the story, really. We
Yeah.
have a couple of gaps and kind of an open-ended ending.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, the Flood, they're never really gone. And sure, they reactivated the Sentinels, and they might be, like, completely gone, but usually they're not. The Brutes with the Banished, they're not going to be total pushovers if they actually, end up being infected by the Flood. In the game, they're pretty formidable foes, especially since Atriox sent 2 of his best men to go fight against them.
Right. These aren't any pushovers. These are kind of
And
elite.
then you also have the humans, and they're still on the planet. Plus you have Red Team running around, and those are Spartans. Now, the Spirit of Fire has been adrift for since like 2531, the events of the first Halo, and they're rocking like Mark V Mjolnir armor, and that's not really up to par with standards nowadays with the UNSC. I feel like if the Flood actually even tried, they could probably capture, or like not even capture, just catch a Red Team member off guard, and then you not only are you gonna have Flood infected brutes, but you might have a Flood infected Spartan running around, which is like completely
Yeah, it's fucking
out of there.
terrifying. I think it'll be the other way around. I think the Flood would go for the low-hanging fruit first and go for like a lot of these civilians and kind of people who don't have this kind of immediate defense around them. Go for the humans with no armor.
They're gonna have to rebuild, especially since they just lost the proto-grade.
Absolutely, but I like this idea that now we have these badass elite brutes and the Spirit of Fire Spartans kind of almost being forced to work together in a sense. I don't know. I just kind of like that idea. Sounds
Yeah.
really good to me.
Yeah, and it even stems back to like the Human Covenant Wars, since the Banished they were fighting humanity in the Covenant, but they were mainly against the Covenant at first. So it's kind of seems like a weird like human Banished alliance back in the day.
Temporary thing, yeah.
Yeah, back then. That Guardian. Have you ever actually?
I did not look into it. I am familiar with the situation, though.
Oh yeah, I feel like the way that's gonna stem out with is Installation 09 being intercepted by that Guardian. I think that's gonna make for
Yeah, when the
completely
Forerunners
cool
get
thing.
involved, shit's gonna go down.
Oh yeah, and then Cortana in the back end too, like controlling all that.
Yeah, man, should be brutal. I'm hoping we get to see a little bit more of the Banished in Halo 6. But let's talk about Legacy. We always like to leave this off on a good note
Oh yeah.
and kind of what it means on the grand scale of things. When I was doing research for Atriox and this whole podcast episode, my main thought was drifting that Atriox kind of reminds me of like the Trojan War. He reminds me of a hero, not any particular one, just kind of his like atmosphere, ambiance, things of that nature, right?
Yeah.
And he seems like a very kind of stoic character in my eyes. And it's been 2 or 3 times that he's been sent on battalions of 40 brutes,
40 brutes, and
he's
coming
always
back-
the last man
always
standing.
The last man standing.
That's I think that's a testament to his willpower, strength, and ability, his survivability, really. But I think it's the rebellion that's the most interesting part because we wouldn't have this story without it, obviously, right?
Right.
What really kind of tickles me good is that Atriox is a strong leader and he's a go-getter guy, but at the same time he doesn't stand for this like political puppetry and this like bullshit. Like he straight up says you're not going to take advantage of me and my people. Like this is ridiculous. I've seen 100 hang on, let me do the math real quick. 127 of my men fall before my eyes, and those are just battles I've been in. Now imagine everything on the grand scale, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I like that. I'm always a sucker for the underdog in this scenario, and he'll later flip flop to be the antagonist, right?
Yeah.
But I'm just a sucker for a character of the people, really, because I believe Halo as a series, Halo 1 really introduces the Covenant as like, hey, these are bad guys. The aliens are always the bad guys, right?
Yeah.
Except for a handful of cases. And then you get into like Halo 2 lore and then Halo 3, and especially with some of the more recent releases and side stories like the Halo Wars, obviously, and some of the novellas out there, you kind of see that the Covenant has its own crazy hierarchy and they have their problems of their own, And so it's only natural for a rebellion or a mutiny to eventually occur, And I think Atriox kind of exemplifies this free will, if you will, where he's anti-establishment in this instance, and he's very kind of, if you're not against the man, you are with the man, to quote Leo from that '70s show. I don't know. I just really appreciate what he's doing out here because it's easy to fall into line and say, hey, I was just following orders.
Right.
And when at the end of the day, he wasn't doing anything totally like extremist. He wasn't, going against and killing his own men just for the shit of it.
Right.
But he stood up for what he believed in, and that's really respectable, man. I think we should all take a note from his legacy, really.
Right. And then even during the Great Schism, any Covenant or Covenant in general that didn't want to either join the reformed Covenant of the Swords Sanguilius, he took under, command of them.
Yeah, I think that
led
says
them.
something as a leader, man.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. You got any closing notes on this?
I just what
Okay, question. Do you think we're going to see more of the Banished in Halo 6? Because this is the kind of the big question floating around right now.
Halo 6, I wouldn't particularly. I mean, well, all right. The Reformed Covenant is pretty much dead, and then so I mean, in my opinion, yeah, we probably see definitely more of the Banished. They reestablished themselves in Halo Wars 2, and then they're definitely gonna be. They might not be the main, enemy in the Halo 6, but they're definitely gonna be coming there because, that's where they left off from. They were after Installation 09, and then the humans kind of just shit all over them. So they're definitely gonna be coming back with a vengeance. Probably
I gotcha.
stronger.
I think okay. So first and foremost, I'd like to see them be a force in Halo 6. I'd like to, in my ideal world, you'd be fighting the Banished, right, or working with the Banished in some sense of the word, right, and then bring back the Flood because it's been 2 mainstream games and we kind of miss them.
Yeah. 10 years.
Yeah, 10 years, right? Holy shit. I don't think they're going to be coming back, though. I think that the studio is going to take this strange approach where they're trying to keep these sideline stories and mainline stories isolated incidents, if you know what I mean. So what I'm trying to get at here is that I think the Banished are probably going to pop up for Halo Wars 3 if they decide to do one. I don't think they're going to pop up for Halo 6. And
Right.
so actually that leads into my follow-up question. Do you think that for a series as big as this, or you can even compare it to Star Wars or anything that has massive like lore behind it, just crazy amounts of literature, do you think it's necessary for a fan to do his or her research beforehand in like a mainline title? So if you're a casual Halo fan, right, and you had no knowledge of the Banished, you didn't listen to this podcast, you didn't do your research, all that stuff, and then suddenly they throw them at you at Halo 6, do you think that would be unfair to the kind of casual?
I feel like it would be unfair. To an extent, though. They're just like another, force of the Covenant. Well, all right. At least from when I started playing Halo, and with Halo 1 and versing these aliens, I actually wanted to know the backstory. And honestly, like after actually digging in and going into the Covenant history, their hierarchy, how they function, and everything, I thoroughly found that interesting, and that actually benefited me when I was like mucking about through the Halo games.
Right,
So
but simply because of the fact that we're dedicating a whole episode of this podcast to a Halo topic, and not even like a general Halo topic. This is like a very specific. It's a deep cut, which is what we do on this show, right?
right,
Simply because of that fact, I think we're excluded from that kind of casual grouping, if you know what I'm saying.
oh yeah,
So like, you feel me? Like, I know that you and I, we like to do our research and we like to dive in. We like all the intricacies and the details,
Yeah.
But is it unfair to the casual Halo fan? Do you think that they should do research?
I feel like they should do research
Yeah, you think
overall.
so?
Oh yeah, like you want to know like who you're up against, and actually if they actually do end up diving into it, it'd be pretty interesting for them.
I'm gonna stand on the opposite end of the spectrum here, because if you're a gaming casual, right? I think if you want to get in, get out, experience a good story, I don't think you should have to do research. This isn't a homework assignment or a big term paper or anything of that nature.
Right.
And that's why I think they developed the Halo War series, because not only do you get more of the good lore stuff, but you get a different, really, gameplay experience at the end of the day, right? It's a totally different game with just the Halo IP on it.
Right.
And so I think that, like I said from earlier, I would love to see the Banished in Halo 6. I think it'd be such a cool addition. Make them stand out, man. Make them like super like Death Trooper style, like, blinged out in black type of stuff. But I don't think it'd be fair to those casual Halo fans out there that, they sit down, they get the game, they play through the 8 or 10 hours, whatever it may be, and then they move on, right? Maybe play some multiplayer and then call it a day with that Halo game in particular. Because I don't know what the numbers are out there for casual to, deep cut Halo fans, but I there is that fan base, and you got to respect that.
Yeah.
And so I think that's kind of my rationale as to why I don't think we're going to see the Banished, at least not in Halo 6, simply because of the matter that you have a lot of streamlining to do with a topic like this.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's a fair statement.
I see where you come from.
Good stuff. You got any closing notes on this topic? Anything you want to? So for everybody out there, Greg actually picked this topic. I think I mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
And he's a really big Halo buff. You have anything supplementary you want to add? Something maybe you left out? He's searching through his notes, ladies and gentlemen.
No, I mean,
No, you were good.
Yeah.
All right. Well then, let's call it a wrap on episode 2. Friends, listeners, this is the expLOREation podcast.
Yep.
This has been our review of the Banished, and remember, keep the lore and expLOREation. Thank you.